now go across to France 24's Gulliver Cragg, standing by in Mykolaiv. Gulliver, good afternoon to you. What more details are we getting on these strikes?
Well, sadly, the death toll from that strike on Uman in central Ukraine has now risen to 15, according to the rescuers there. The rescue work in Uman is still going on, where a large part of this block of flats was destroyed. Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, has said that the rescue workers will not stop until everybody is accounted for, and they're absolutely sure that there is no one still stuck under the debris. Dozens of people have also been injured in that strike, and that wasn't the only city that was hit. There was also a strike on Dnipro in the east of Ukraine. 2 people there died, and there was a residential building that was hit and also a warehouse with building materials. Of course, what people are wondering today is why were these particular places struck? It seems as though the Russian campaign against Ukraine's electricity infrastructure is at an end, having failed really to completely shut down the country's power grid over the winter. What are they exactly aiming for now? Both of the residential buildings I've mentioned were quite near to industrial hangars, I understand it, of some sort, so it's possible that the real target was missed, or it's also possible that this was simply for the sake of instilling terror in the populations, particularly of Uman, which is in central Ukraine, far from any front line and hasn't really suffered very much, relatively speaking, of course, in the course of this war. There was a third town also that was hit, that's Ukrainka, just to the southeast of Kiev. I haven't got any information about casualties there, though. And as you said, the majority of the rockets that were fired by Russia overnight were shot down by Ukrainian air defense forces, as is almost always the case.
Gulliver, while you were speaking, we had comments from Pope Francis coming in. He's obviously in Hungary on a 3-day visit there, and he's called for creative efforts for peace to end the war in Ukraine. Clearly, the war in Ukraine is going to overshadow his visit to Hungary. Now, Pope Francis has been sort of vilified in the past, I could say, by Ukraine for suggesting that it was time to negotiate to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. Is negotiation even on people's minds there, the authorities' minds, as they plan this counteroffensive in the spring?
Well, if it is, they're not talking about it. Remember, the Russians' position at the moment is that Ukraine should accept the annexation by Russia of 4 Ukrainian regions plus Crimea that was already annexed in 2014. That's something that's absolutely obviously unacceptable to the Ukrainians, especially considering the stories that keep coming out of the occupied areas. Just a couple of days ago, I was talking to the deputy mayor of Melitopol, an occupied city in Zaporizhia region, talking about the climate of fear in that city, where people can be detained just for having any kind of Ukrainian symbol on their smartphone, for example. And so the Ukrainians absolutely cannot countenance any idea of negotiating with Russia if they are expected to put any territorial concessions on the table. They're really not prepared to do that. What people in Ukraine are talking about all the time at the moment is the counteroffensive. Here I am in Mykolaiv. There are posters up all around town to try to encourage people to join various different new units of the armed forces that are being created. I've also been talking, though, to military recruiters who are dealing with conscription, who are saying they're actually finding it not that easy to persuade people to fulfill what are actually their legal obligations and sign up. But they say there's all sorts of different people and different responses that they get. But the mood is very much preparations for a military assault to try to retake that occupied territory. The defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov, though, did pour a little bit of cold water on expectations yesterday in an interview with Ukrainian TV, when he said that he thought maybe people's expectations were a little bit too high and people were expecting a huge amount of territory to be retaken in a very short space of time. American leaders, particularly General Mark Milley, the head of the General Staff in America, he has said that he doesn't think it's realistic that Ukraine can take back all of its territory this year.
We'll see how this pans out. Gulliver, thank you very much for the update. Gulliver Cragg reporting there from Mykolaiv.